Whenever you're ready. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's Bridge Lunch Break event. Bridge Michigan's, this is all about the FAFSA fiasco. My name is Jackie Garrett, Fund Development Associate at Bridge Michigan, your source for nonprofit, nonpartisan news in Michigan. In this hour, we'll discuss how the changes to 2024's FAFSA form are burdening Michigan students, families, and educational institutions. Today, our special guest panelists will include Katie Condon, Vice President of Enrollment Management at Eastern Michigan University, Diane Cosme, Director of Michigan Student Aid at the Michigan Department of Lifelong Education, Advancement and Potential, and Jamie Jacobs, Deputy Director of the Michigan College Access Network. Bridge Education reporter Isabel Lohman will moderate this discussion. You can read full bios of our panelists on the event page, and we will drop a link to that page in the chat for you as well. Our conversation will begin in just a moment, and Isabel will lead the discussion with Katie, Diane, and Jamie for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll turn to your questions from the audience. Please type any questions you have for our panelists in the chat window at any time. And if you are not a panelist, please remain muted throughout today's discussion. We are recording today's conversation and it will be posted on Bridge Michigan this week. You can subscribe to our newsletters by visiting www.bridgemi.com and then click subscribe. Events like this one are made possible by the support of Bridge members. Some of you all are on the chat today. If you'd like to join this membership community, we will drop a link to do so in the chat as well. A reminder, please stay muted throughout the discussion. I'll now pass it over to Isabel to get us started.
Hey everyone, thank you for being here. We've got a really great panel today and I'm excited. We're also hoping that when you watch this video, if you see a tidbit that you think is going to be helpful for a high school student in your life or a college student or a potential college student, that you send it their way. It will be free to watch afterward. So to get started, to sort of set the scene, I want to do a little bit of a rapid fire question. So Katie, can you just start off by telling me what the FAFSA is and who should be filling it out?
Yes, absolutely. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. Every prospective college student should be filling it out. And so if you are a U.S. citizen or one of the qualifying groups that does qualify for the FAFSA, if you're considering a collegiate education, if you've applied but you're not sure, I hear a lot of students saying, well, I don't think I'm going to be eligible for aid, so I'm not going to fill out the FAFSA. That's not a reason to not fill out the FAFSA. Every student who is interested in pursuing any type of certificate, undergraduate, 2-year, or graduate program should be filling out their FAFSA every single year.
Perfect. And Diane, can the aid from the FAFSA form be used at trade schools?
Yes, if the trade school is a participating school that is accredited and qualifies for federal aid, a FAFSA can be submitted to determine eligibility at a trade school.
Perfect. And then Jamie, hit us with some numbers. How many high school seniors have filled out the FAFSA this year, and how does that compare to last year?
Yeah, so things are not looking good this year. I think that's why we're having this call to help folks understand what really is going on. Through June of last year, which is when most seniors, right, complete the FAFSA, where they've readily got the most help through school counselors, college advisors, 58,000 students had filed. So through June of last year, right now we've got 34,000 students. And at this same time last year, that was 47,000 students. So just to give the context, we're about 13,000 students behind in the number of students who had filed at this same time last year.
Okay, so we have less students filling it out than last year. We're in late April. Jamie, can you help set the scene in terms of what is happening right now? Are students still waiting for their financial aid packages? And then can you give us a little bit of history of how did we get to this point?
Yeah, so just to start from just how did we get here? There's sort of good news that got us here, and then things have just been very complicated. So many organizations, like the 3 organizations you're hearing from today, have been part of advocacy efforts federally for quite a few years on simplifying the FAFSA process, both the form and the process. As a significant win in 2021 and 2022, the FAFSA Simplification Act was enacted. That's a win. I want to underscore that this is a win, but things have been challenging in implementation. So over the past 3 years, the United States Department of Education has been implementing those changes over a series of phases to simplify the FAFSA form and process for students and families. This is the last of the changes that we are seeing this year, and this is the final phase and really the most significant changes in terms of user interface and the way the average student or family interacts with the FAFSA. And so there have been technical glitches and sort of struggles in that process. Because of some of those technical glitches and quite frankly, just the large number of changes that federal student aid and the U.S. Department of Education had to implement since 2016, the FAFSA has opened in October. There were delays in sort of the season starting this year. So we were already sort of behind the 8 ball when students had their first opportunity to access the form. So it wasn't until late December of 2023 that this year's graduating class of seniors and their families had an opportunity to take a look at the new FAFSA and really start filling it out and completing it. What they were able to find was a form that was intermittently available and wasn't working for all students, for both technical reasons and some like non-technical reasons. But what they also found was a form that when it was working was incredibly simplified, but for the vast majority of students, it wasn't working at that time. And so it wasn't really simplified for them. And that was late December. Those technical glitches have sort of continued. Some of them have been resolved. Some new ones have surfaced. But what I want folks to understand is that these glitches and these technical issues are connected to both a new form itself, right? Think of any new piece of technology, anytime a new Facebook rolls out, right? Anytime a new piece and interface rolls out, there's some challenges. But additionally, there's all new ways in which the federal government, and therefore any of the folks who also utilize the FAFSA data, like our friends at MyLeap for state financial aid, and our friends at Eastern Michigan, and all the institutions working to package students with affordable pathways to post-secondary, there has been changes in how we are deciding the need of students, what information we are gathering as the federal government, and how we are helping those partners at the state level, at the community levels, and at the institutional levels best determine a student's need and how to move the most aid to the students who are in the highest need of aid. So this has all led to a whole lot of delays for students and families, right? And both being able to file and also delays for higher ed and their ability, and states and their ability to help students understand what affordability may look like. In most cases, students have not yet received financial aid packages. A few colleges are just starting to get those out to students this week. So we're hoping to see a lot of energy here soon, but students have really, and families have been in a holding pattern this entire year, waiting to understand what affordability looks like for them.
Yeah, and affordability is like a really key point, right? We're not talking about $10 versus $20, right? We're sometimes talking about $100, thousands of dollars over the course of a college experience. Katie, your school recently submitted or gave students their financial aid packages. Can you walk us through, if someone's watching this call and they don't even know what that package is, can you just explain a little bit about what's in a package?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So we did, as of this week, shout out to the amazing work that all of the financial aid departments are doing throughout the state of Michigan. A process that would normally take months has been done in just a couple of weeks. And so what that looks like for students, at least here at EMU, is that we have electronically notified our prospective freshman students who will be enrolling here in the fall 2024 term, that they are eligible to log in to their electronic portal and view their financial aid package. What their financial aid package typically consists of is some information regarding whether or not they received their Pell Grant, which is a federally funded grant that does not need to be paid back, unsubsidized or subsidized loans, which are loans that do need to be paid back but are sponsored by the federal government, as well as the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, and so the eligibility for that and kind of an estimated amount that they would be eligible for, as well as any need-based aid that an institution may give you, or merit-based aid that an institution may give you. So those could be things like, oh, you had a great GPA in high school, here's some merit awards around that. Or an institution may also have a financial aid strategy to help students meet the cost of attendance. So for example, here at Eastern, we have our Eastern Tuition Advantage program that allows students to match up to the cost of tuition if they are Pell Grant eligible. And so that would also be in the financial aid package, as well as some additional information about maybe some additional loans that a student may be eligible for, like a Parent Plus loan, or some additional scholarships that a student could apply to. So it's a pretty comprehensive package. It can take a little bit to get familiar with it. I would recommend, if you don't know what you're looking at, which is perfectly fine, it's a lot of words, unsubsidized, subsidized, that you may have never heard before, Michigan Achievement Scholarship, just chat with somebody from the financial aid department of the school that you're thinking about. We are actively waiting by the phones to be able to help students. And so you do not have to be the expert in financial aid. In the next month, as you make your college decision, please reach out to whatever financial aid department that you are working with, and they can help walk you through that package as well.
Thanks, Katie. You mentioned the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. That's a really big deal. It's something that offers up to $27,500 for a Michigan high school graduate to attend a university in the state. Diane, can you tell us a little bit more about the program? What should people know? How much is it for a community college? What can you share?
Yes. So the Michigan Achievement Scholarship was a program that was launched for class of 2023 and forward. So our first year of awards happened this past year, 23-24. And it is an award that can be used across many of the sectors of our institutions. So we're talking community college, four-year public, and four-year privates, and even some of our training skills areas. So this is a far-reaching program. It's one of the largest investments in resources for our students, recognizing that students will pursue credentials in different ways. They'll go for a skills credential, they'll go for an associate's degree, a bachelor degree, and what have you. And this is a resource that can be used towards all of those endeavors. So the award, as you were saying, is a maximum of $27,500. And what that looks like is, like, at a community college, you're looking at about $8,700 per over the course of 3 years. At a four-year institution, you're looking at a maximum of $27,500 over the course of 5 years, and a maximum of $20,000 over the course of 5 years at a four-year private institution. So again, lots of options for our students. We have the Michigan Achievement Skills for those that are looking for skills credentials. The driver for this is the completion of the FAFSA. So this is why this is so significant, and why we want to still encourage our students to complete the FAFSA, because we need information from the FAFSA to determine eligibility. And we're looking at, 7 out of 10 of our students that are graduating can qualify for this program. So it's so important that a student completes the FAFSA, and just keep driving the fact that FAFSA is not just for Pell Grant. FAFSA is not just for loans. This is for also state awards, state programs beyond the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, for the college and universities to determine their institutional awards. So it's such an important gateway application. And that's what we really want to emphasize is, as Jamie was saying, the simplification of the FAFSA meant a change in also how Pell Grant eligibility was being determined, which means we have a larger pool of eligible students in the state of Michigan for Pell Grant. And we want to encourage our families that maybe thought, why am I going to complete this? I'm not going to qualify for anything. You should consider it, because there are now more resources that are using the FAFSA as that application to determine that eligibility. So can't emphasize it enough. It's this process this year has been challenging. There's no doubt about it. But this application is still the application that's going to open the door to many resources for our students in that space for post-secondary education. And you have a lot of resources, as Jamie and Katie were saying. It takes a village sometimes to support our students, and we're here to offer that support and encourage our students through this process.
We've thrown a lot of numbers at our audience, and if any audience member has any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. So we have this federal form that people use they fill it out, and then schools and states determine if students can get grants, loans, work study, and scholarships. But if only roughly 1/3 of Michigan high school seniors have filled out the form, what about the other 2/3? Jamie, is there any worry that what's happening right now is going to impact both students long-term and schools long-term?
For sure. The current thought is that we might see an enrollment decline for this year that's bigger than we saw in 2020 from the impacts of the onset of COVID. And that is not to be understated, that both impacts individuals and families and their lives and their future opportunities. It also impacts communities in the state. Education is the surest pathway to economic prosperity for individuals, for families, for communities. And we all know that as you get older, beyond your high school career, life gets only more complicated, not less complicated. And so, the message we keep sharing is, in light of all of the complications, don't delay, right? Find your advocates, find folks who will help you. They exist in your K-12 schools, they exist in your community-based organizations, your after-school programs, the colleges and universities in your community. Heck, the colleges and universities in the community next to you, folks are really eager to help, and you will need the help. Every student and family is using the help this year because it's new for everyone. But the impact of not enrolling is both high impact on individuals and families, but also community in the state as a whole.
I'm curious, anyone can answer this. Do you all think there's a growing skepticism about the value of a college degree?
And I think there's definitely discussion about that. And I think that in that discussion, we also need to consider the fact that how students approach post-secondary and beyond high school looks different. There are a lot of options of what a student could do after high school to receive the training, skills, and what have you. And it's just trying to recognize how are students consuming education and where that can lead them. I know, like with our outreach team that goes out and they have conversations with our students in the high school. Sometimes it's hard to connect the dots of, okay, I'm going to qualify for the achievement scholarship, but what does that mean really? So I get this and I go to college, but what ultimately does that mean? It's like, okay, what type of work do you want to do? Okay, well then you start to suss out a more, a deeper conversation with the student to help them try to visualize, the possibilities. And I think that's a lot of what we are trying to do is just let students know there are a lot of possibilities out there, a lot of pathways to those possibilities. And here are some resources that will help you get to that, to that pathway that you're trying to get on. And I want to sort of circle back to something that Jamie was saying about the FAFSA and the challenges and the concern that maybe students aren't going to complete the FAFSA. Having been in this space now, working with students for 25 years at this point, working at a higher ed institution in the past, that challenge has existed for a very long time. And it's just, I think what we're trying to do is so many efforts of providing good information to our students, information to help them make decisions that can be scary, that can be confusing, not knowing. You don't know what you don't know in this process, and you don't know what questions to ask necessarily. But that's like what Katie was saying as far as reaching out to your financial aid office at the school that you're thinking about attending, asking those questions, reaching out to your high school counselor. Don't leave a question unasked if you're just uncertain of what does this mean or what's the worth of this? There are a lot of individuals who would love to have that conversation with the student and just sort of help them and encourage them and support them.
Thanks for that, Diane. Along with that, so there's sort of a couple different things going on. You have the delay from the federal government, then you have schools and universities and colleges not able to then give that information to students. We're about a week away from what is typically known as College Decision Day. That's typically the day across the country where schools want students to lock in their deposits, commit to a school. Are we ready for that? And also, do students have enough information to make that type of life-changing and potentially expensive decision?
We're not ready. I mean, just to be really honest, students are mostly and families in the dark still on the cost of attending any of the institutions they've applied to. So Katie mentioned this, some institutions have just started getting those packages out to students. So they're just starting to get the information and be overwhelmed, right, by all of the information they're holding on to. And a lot of decisions that are big have to be made. And so I think we're not ready. What we are ready for, I think, as a state and a field is flexibility. So I think students and families don't feel ready on May 1 to make decisions. I think what the field has said, and that's higher ed institutions across the board, community colleges, private institutions, our public institutions, is that's okay. We're ready for you when you're ready for us. And that we understand, just like you understand, that you don't have the information or you're just getting your hands on the information. And I have yet to hear a single higher ed institution say to me, I want students to make this decision without the information that they need to make an informed decision. The institutions know that they can't get you and keep you if you aren't making the best decision for you and your family and you as an individual as well. And so I think, no, we're not ready for students to all be making decisions on May 1, but the institutions are okay with that. They sort of have decided they have to be okay with that, but they want to be okay with that. And so I think what I want folks to hear from that is it's okay. You're in good company. Everyone's in the same company. We keep hearing from students, I'm sure Isabel, you've heard this as well, who say, I haven't gotten anything and I'm feeling behind. The reality is we're behind together. And when we're behind together, we're actually all in the same place and we're sort of all in the same boat. And that means it's okay that we're not ready to make decisions on May 1, but that there's some time still. But that there is an urgency, right? Because life still moves and life still happens. There is that urgency. But, hopefully information is, and we know it is coming for students to be able to make those decisions here soon.
Yeah, I can just talk from the institutional perspective. Many schools have adjusted timelines and are pushing back to a June 1st, and many of the rest of us are fully prepared to help students all summer long. And so I just had an email this morning about adding an additional orientation date late in July for students who are still making their decisions then. EMU is probably one of many institutions looking at strategies to make sure that we're available to students all summer long as they're making those decisions, as they're looking at the cost, weighing that with commuting or living on campus. And so at the end of this, classes do start. We're not adjusting that timeline. Classes will still start at many of these institutions in August, but fully prepared to help students throughout the summer, like many other institutions, to make sure that students have time to make those decisions.
Thank you. So let's say a student gets their financial aid offer and they realize it's just not feasible. Their dream school, they've looked at their aid, it's just not possible. What advice do you have for students and parents who find out either their dream school isn't feasible or they just can't make the payment? What are their next steps?
One thing I would say is, it may not initially be feasible, but pursuing a post-secondary degree is still feasible. There may need to be some readjustments in what you're thinking about the path to that degree. And that is something that, I, again, had many conversations with students of how does this make sense for you, for your situation, for your family situation? There's ways that we can make that happen. When you think about when a family completes the FAFSA, you're using prior year financial information. There could have been a change since that time. And you want to make sure that students are reaching out to their financial aid office if there has been a change, to see if there can be a recalculation done because they've had a change to the income that was originally reported. So I would say, take a step back, take a look at, okay, first, breathe, take a step back and just sort of consider, okay, has anything changed? Should I be contacting the financial aid office to ask those questions on, will this change any of my eligibility? What are my other options? And can I still get to that end goal by going another route?
I just want to add that I think the short of this, as I thought about this, is that's a roadblock, not a dead end. Don't delay enrollment. The pathway is still available, both for you to end up at your dream school or for you to think about why was that your dream school, and what was it a pathway to, and how do you lean on, again, the supportive adults around you, to say, look, my dream is X. What are other pathways to get there? There are a ton, I promise you. In Michigan, there are lots of pathways to get to all of the places students are interested in getting to. And sometimes we're thinking about a different pathway and it's a different fork in the road. But the important message is reach out, get the help, get additional information, and don't make that as the decision to not enroll. Still enroll, but be thoughtful and purposeful and engage with supportive adults on where that might be if it wasn't what you were originally thinking.
Gotcha. We're starting to get some reader questions. So if you all have additional reader questions, please put them in the chat. We're going to get to them. One other thing I wanted to ask Diane is the Michigan Achievement Scholarship is based on the FAFSA, right? You submit the FAFSA, the state looks at that, the schools look at that. That's how they determine if you are eligible for the scholarship. With the low submission rates of FAFSA, should the state consider using a different metric or a different form to get the Michigan Achievement Scholarship into more students' hands?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, that might be one of the immediate considerations is like change the process. But then I think on the backside of that, that means changing the process, which is that's a large undertaking to try to determine what could be an alternative option for calculation. But I also think one of the things that we have been trying to do is streamlining this process of resources for students. So to create another application process or another way to determine eligibility, is that going to be helpful, or is that going to create more confusion for our students and families on how to qualify for multiple avenues of aid? And when we look at the FAFSA being like that, like I mentioned, like that gateway of eligibility for state aid, for federal aid, and for institutional dollars, that's just sort of it's an all-encompassing way to unlock those resources. So yes, this year has been bumpy, but the FAFSA, like I said, it is going to unlock those other options, not just the state options, because we want to make sure that our students are utilizing all of their resources. I think in the past, when we did not require a FAFSA to be completed, what we found is that students were leaving Pell dollars on the table. And that's a significant support to our students. So we want to make sure that they're utilizing all of their resources.
It's a tricky one,
Yeah.
it seems like. So we're getting several reader questions about SAI, which is the Student Aid Index. For people who are not super familiar, this is a new term this year. It replaces something called the Expected Family Contribution, or the EFC. So one of the questions we got was, is there somewhere I can see the math of how they figured out the Student Aid Index? So I'm going to paste in a couple links in the chat that walk us through how the SAI is calculated. But Katie, could you just explain a little bit about what the SAI is and how people should be using that?
Yes, is in all acronyms in higher education. It's nice and complicated. When you boil down SAI, it's basically a calculation that looks at student income and student assets as well as parental income and parental assets if you are a dependent student. And so there is a calculation. I know that Isabel will post a link in there that it's just like a 10-minute SAI calculator. So you can really see what's going in to determine SAI. And so it also is taking things into consideration like the number of people in your household and other assets such as a small business that your family may have. So I wish I could say it's just pull out your W-2 and it's just this and this. And unfortunately, it's not that easy. And so it does take a little bit. I would also recommend, as you'll hear me say many times today, talk with a financial aid representative at the institutions that you're looking at attending. And they can also kind of walk you through of what things on your completed FAFSA kind of made up that SAI as well. But that quick 10-minute calculator should give you a pretty good idea of what are the numbers that are utilizing for that calculation.
Awesome. We also have a reader question that says, what happens when it seems like your official SAI is erroneously high? This person mentioned that it seems like the estimate is much higher than other calculators. And it also sounds like this person has tried to reach out to financial aid offices, but isn't sure what to do when that SAI is determining need for private-based scholarships. Any advice on that?
can take that one. And then if anybody else wants to fill in anything. So first and foremost, what I've encountered with several families is that when they're calculating their SAI, they're not using the prior year data. They're utilizing more recent data, maybe just your tax return that you just did. And so that's, again, as Diane was talking a little bit about, talking with your financial aid department. There are forms that can be filled out. Financial aid departments can recalculate SAI based upon changes in the family. So if there was a job that a parent had 2 years ago that they no longer have that income, then all of that can be addressed throughout the financial aid process and working with the financial aid department. And so would always encourage kind of, again, there's some nuances with this, with prior year versus what you may be utilizing and to do those calculations yourself. So again, even if it is a private loan eligibility, you can still talk with your financial aid department about your SAI. And again, making sure all of that data is correct in that calculation.
And just to clarify, does that mean, oh, Jamie, did you want to add something?
I was just gonna say, there are SAIs that have been inaccurate. So I can't underscore, as Katie is saying, enough. The financial aid offices are your new best friends, because not only are they're helping you to understand, did you use the right information? Is there new information that's more accurately portraying your family circumstances? In fact, is there a calculation error? And they can help you understand that and flag that. And all of that could impact your actual ultimate SAI or your understanding of the SAI you were given. And that could mean there is a new SAI, right, down the road that's coming your way, that could impact these conversations that aren't just with that institution. The institution is providing you expertise that is not just to help you at that particular institution. And I think that's a really big misunderstanding. Is like, if I talk to Katie's team at Eastern, it's only going to help me as I think about Eastern. And the reality is it will help you as you think about wherever you're going and all of the packages and all of the financial support available to you.
Gotcha. We're getting lots of questions. Please keep throwing them in. We just got a question that asked, what's the SAI cutoff for the Michigan Achievement Scholarship? Diane, do you want to take that?
Yes. For the 23-24 school year, it is 30,000 as the cap for the SAI. And then for our students, our students that were last year, it was a 25,000 SAI, but we'll carry forward a 30,000 SAI for this year.
Another practical question we have, someone says they're not able to get onto the FAFSA website. It's saying that they can't verify the information from the Social Security Administration, and I haven't changed a thing since last year. Why? Any advice?
These are the technical issues. These are happening. They're happening to lots of people for a variety of reasons, and many of them are reasons that you can't find. So don't look for the reason as to why it's happening. Continue to log in to try, go to different browsers, reset things like your cache and your cookies and all of those things that we have sort of learned to do over the years, and continue to call for help. You can both call the state, our friends at MyLeap, who can offer some outreach support if there are things that are in the process potentially going wrong. Also calling or chatting with federal student aid. Now, I will say that will take time. It will take a commitment from you. You may have to call today and wait online, and then you get hung up on, and you have to call tomorrow. And I wish there was a better pathway there. But there are cases, and there are not just a few of these. There are cases where there are technical issues in the system that have absolutely nothing to do with the individual that is trying to get access to the form, and everything to do with just something that is not working in a glitch scenario on the back end of the system. In some situations, like if it's a parent who's having struggles and there is a second parent, the other parent sometimes has no problem, but the one parent does have problems. And I would again say, spend no time wondering explain why that's the case and take the pathway that moves you forward. But it's also another good example of connect with the financial aid office, literally drive if possible, right to the financial aid office, schedule an in-person meeting. I think of nothing more than to be like counseling support for you that indeed, there is a pathway, but that they might have some, sort of workaround suggestions for you. Most of the financial aid offices and the support staff are still figuring out what are the workarounds since this is a new form when there are those technical issues that no doubt are happening and will continue to happen here for the foreseeable future.
Thanks, Jamie. Just one other thing, quick thing to add. Because of a lot of the technical issues, there is now a chat bot. If you just go to studentaid.gov, I believe, I was trying to see what the name is, Ask Aiden, is a little owl that is in the bottom right-hand corner. And so feel free to utilize that too. That may just get you some general workarounds the same way that Jamie gave some advice as far as clearing cash and things like that. It may just provide some general, it's not a direct connection. It's a chat bot AI type system, but would highly encourage you to check that out too, just to make sure that all of those resources are available. Oh, Isabel, you're muted.
Uh-oh. Okay, we're getting more and more questions. Please keep putting them in the chat. One question we got from a reader when they submitted their registration to sign up for this event is, can I use the FAFSA in Michigan to gain more than one certificate in a school year? And if I use a grant to gain a certificate, can I still apply to college for a 2 to 4 year program in the same year? Katie, do you want to start? And then Diane, you can follow up.
Yeah, there's again a lot of nuance with a lot of these situations. I will say that in thinking about the Pell Grant in particular, it typically can only be utilized at one school at a time. And so you can't be enrolled at multiple institutions in the same semester to utilize a lot of the grants that are out there. And so that would be the thing that, again, you're going to hear it on repeat. Talk with an admissions counselor, talk with the financial aid department. If some of the programs are offered at the same school, there may be some nuances there, but I'll let Diane kind of fill in some of the also nuances with the Michigan Achievement versus grants and how those can be utilized separately.
Thanks, Katie. So with the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, you have the Michigan Achievement Scholarship and you have the Michigan Achievement Scholarship skills. So depending on which pathway, if you're going for training or skills training credentials, that would be the skills scholarship. If you're going for the associate degree or a bachelor degree, that's the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. The application is still, the skills scholarship does not require the FAFSA, but the Michigan Achievement Scholarship for the associate degree, bachelor degree, that does require the FAFSA. So there you can stack these awards. Like if you're going for an associate degree or bachelor degree, you could receive more than one. There's calculations that the college would need to do to determine how much eligibility you would have. So again, you could qualify for Pell Grant, you could qualify for achievement, you could qualify for an institutional grant. There's things that you can layer in to assist with the total cost of attendance.
Thank you. We have another question. I have students who are not interested in a 4-year degree and want to instead go into a skilled trades or just get an associate's. Is there a good place for them to look for aid? Diane?
Yeah, and this is where I will definitely reference our resource page. So if you go to michigan.gov/MI student aid, you'll land on our landing page and go into the student and family section, and there'll be a full listing of our state programs. And we'll also link to programs from our 60 by 30 office. We're all in that higher ed office, but we have our resources listed there. And so it'll let you know if this can go towards skills training or associate degree. It'll let you know if it goes towards a bachelor degree. So you'll see all of the different state programs that we have available, and might be surprised that we have as many as we do. But like Jamie was saying, there's a lot out there. So this is a great resource page to go to. So Michigan, yeah, thanks Amber for putting that in. If you go to that website, you will find our information there.
Perfect. What about state scholarships? Are the date deadlines getting extended in any situation, Diane?
Yeah, we only have 2 state programs that have a priority deadline, and we did extend that priority deadline to July 1, and that would be for the Michigan Competitive Scholarship and the Michigan Tuition Grant. The other scholarships, like our Fostering Futures Scholarship for for youth that have experienced foster youth, that is August 1 for the application, but we still accept applications after that deadline. So Michigan Achievement Scholarship does not have a priority deadline that can continue to be completed throughout the year.
Awesome. Keep throwing in those questions. We're getting to a lot of them. Another question is, we are a community foundation that has need-based scholarships. Is there a best practice for using a student's student aid index to determine their eligibility for need-based scholarships? Jamie, do you want to?
Yeah, I can provide a little bit of context. Yeah, in terms of the maximum Pell eligible student is going to have an SAI. And this year it's another new thing. You can actually have a negative SAI. And so negative 1,500 is going to be a maximum Pell Grant eligible student, which is historically defined as likely the highest need group of students. And so if you're kind of looking for that SAI range to target for some community-based scholarships, that would be the group that is the maximum Pell Grant eligible this year.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Okay, so we've talked about need-based scholarships. We've talked about SAI. We've talked about FAFSA deadlines and FAFSA mess ups and rollouts and glitches. Another question is, do we feel we are informing students well enough of the reward for doing well for achievement scholarships, grants, etc.? How could we, or can we do a better job of this for our future students to promote better achievement on the requirements?
I think I'm going to go back to my previous question response when I was like, it takes a village. I think in our first year, it was a lot of awareness, and we're still doing awareness of our achievement scholarship. And that is something that we are always looking for opportunities where we can communicate the information and trying to meet the students where they're at. I by no means understand what interest a high school student will have, like what spaces of social media they might be interested in, but we have, we do have, a team that looks to, reach out the message to our students where they're at through the high schools, through the social media, through, ad campaign on the radio, billboards. We are, getting out information to our high schools, trying to constantly create those partnerships in the community to inform them of the resources. And I think that's where we have opportunity to expand those partnerships. I think that we can continue to better inform our students.
Yeah, one thing I'll add, Diane, is what you'll find in the state of Michigan is that most institutions are very transparent with the merit-based scholarships that they offer. So this is available for all students. And so it's a great conversation for families and counselors to have with maybe freshmen in high school to talk a little bit about what does it mean to have a 3.75 GPA when you graduate and how that can pay off. And of course, scholarships will hopefully continue to grow and change in those 4 years, but at least give them some benchmarks of some things to shoot for throughout their high school career to encourage more academic achievements and other types of achievements as well are typically rewarded throughout the college admissions process. But it gives some guideposts of things to shoot for. What is the difference between a 3.5 and a 3.75? That could potentially be $10,000 or $15,000 over 4 years of a collegiate education through merit aid. And so certainly I think you will find Michigan is a very transparent state when it comes to merit-based opportunities for students.
And in some cases, at least, it seems like the schools have already given out the information about the merit-based aid. So even if you don't have your student aid information, you might know if you qualify for a scholarship tied to your high school GPA or something like that. Jamie, did you want to add something?
I just want to add a piece that is like, no one on this call is not encouraging achievement and high achievement, and there are rewards for high achievement. There are also a lot of financial investments that are need-based, and need-based means a lot more than it, I think, did when a lot of us may have touched need-based as children, as young people ourselves. The Michigan Achievement Scholarship is a good example. It's not based on achievement. It's based on graduation, right? The achievement of graduating from high school, but not with a particular GPA. And the student aid index of 30,000 is actually a pretty high window for need when you think about negative 1,500 to 0 being full Pell eligibility. We're not just talking about Pell students. So while no one here is saying we don't want to encourage students to achieve, there is also significant aid available to students who have like very average high school experiences and GPAs and maybe had a terrible start to an experience or had a tragic situation that means they're graduating with a lower GPA. Post-secondary is still an open door pathway for them and likely a very affordable pathway, but often the FAFSA is the vehicle, right? To understand that, but also be able to access that aid. So yes, often for high achieving students, there is significant merit-based aid. There is a lot of aid that is not merit-based aid that students need to often file the FAFSA to even know exists, but is there and arguably sort of waiting for them on the other side of that door.
Another question we have is, what steps are post-secondary institutions taking to lower the cost of attendance for students?
Happy to start, and then other folks can kind of fill in. So many schools in Michigan have some type of tuition advantage program where they're matching Pell eligibility up to the cost of tuition to make sure it's as affordable as possible for all of our students who are Pell eligible in the state. So would highly recommend for students to look into those programs a little bit more. Again, many institutions in the state do provide that. As a person who sits on the post-secondary side, every single year we reevaluate our scholarships. For example, we just raised all of our transfer scholarships to continue students who are looking at that 2-year to 4-year pathway to give them more resources in order to make that pathway a reality. And so institutions are constantly evaluating in what ways can we make sure this is as affordable as possible for as many students as possible. So would highly encourage you, again, if you look at websites, you'll see all sorts of different initiatives for schools to make sure it's as affordable as possible. Even many schools have scholarship programs that are full cost of tuition and housing, room and board for maybe an application process. And so always being mindful of those as well. But I don't know if Jamie or Diane wants to fill in any other gaps there.
Yeah, and I just think, to layer into that, as I said, the investment of the achievement scholarship is one of the largest investments in resources to our students. And so I think that is, continuing to offer those types of resources as well to as many of our students as possible.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it seems like we're wrapping up. One thing I do want to do is, if there's any resources you all want to share with our readers, I think this is a good moment. If there's a specific resource you think people should be looking at, or a specific website, YouTube link, anything, I just want to go around the room and give you all an opportunity to shout out something that you think would be helpful for families and parents and counselors. And in these last few minutes, readers, if you have any other questions, throw them in the chat. We have a few minutes left. We can get to them. Katie, let's start with you. What's one resource you hope parents and families and students will look at?
Two, I'm going to be brief. One, the National College Attainment Network post-FAFSA completions. That's a great resource for counselors if you're not familiar with it. So you can track your individual FAFSA completions by high school. For parents and students, please check your email. We're sending all sorts of reminders, so it's not necessarily a resource. I promise you, we are over resourcing you in your email inboxes. You're just not always checking it, or I understand there's a million other emails coming in. And so part of this is parents were emailing you on a regular basis as well, but students were emailing you almost every week at this point in the enrollment cycle. And so please be checking that email, be mindful of the resources that we're presenting in those, because we're trying to make them as personalized as possible. So what a student needs to hear from us when, for example, when we send out our FAFSA reminders, around 50% of the people open them. So even out of our own admitted students, we still have 8,000 students that are potentially unaware that the financial aid package is ready for review. So email is #1 resource. We're emailing you all the time.
Perfect. Diane, how about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna echo what Katie was saying. Please check your email, because I know we have also started our emailing campaign for our students who have submitted their FAFSAs, but maybe have to go back and correct them to complete them. This was just recently in the last week or so that students were able to go back in to make corrections on their FAFSA. So we are trying to push out that information. So please, please, please check your email. There may be some really vital information there for you. I will say that we have a website, michigan.gov/FAFSA info, and that's going to lead you to some links from the federal aid office as well. But we just created a spot where you could go to find some really helpful information about this process. And again, take a look at the award information. So just trying to create one spot where you can go and maybe find all those little morsels of information that you've been looking for.
Great, thank you. And Jamie.
I just want to say the help is out there. The vast majority of people and families need help this year, have utilized help. There is no shame in getting help, and there are a lot of adults that are eager, willing, and able to help. And I dropped a link in. We've said this a bunch, but this is your school counselors, your college advisors, the financial aid staff at the institutions. There's chatbots on FSA's site, Federal Student Aid. If you want to talk to a computer, and you just don't want your question to go to another human, you can first get your questions to AI. And I also dropped a link. We've been training folks in preparation for new FAFSA, and needs to make sure that folks are readily available across the state in your community to help you in person, to help you virtually. So there's a link with a list of folks and email addresses where you could reach out, and that could be questions, that could be an actual session. Really just underscoring there are so many folks ready to help and willing to help. The thing I wouldn't do is Google for help. Go to one of those types of places, spaces, or offices, because those are the folks that I think are going to be there for you, right? And you could sort of utilize those folks, make sure you get your questions answered. The help is there. Those folks are ready and eager and willing to help.
Thank you all. A couple other resources. Bridge Michigan is free to read. So if you want to learn more about what's happening with the FAFSA, we have several stories about it. We have stories about how students and counselors are preparing. We have a story about how you can get free pizza if you fill out the FAFSA. We have a story, and each story we have a link at the bottom that explains how to fill out the FAFSA, where to get more resources, how to get help. And then the other thing is you can always email me. I'm not a FAFSA expert, but I can always call someone to try to get you a better answer. Just last week, I was talking to students and they were like, I don't know when my financial aid offer is going to come. And I actually called up the school and got the answer for them. So we want to be a resource for you all. And thank you all so much for making time for this event today. I'm going to turn it back to Jackie.
Thank you to all of our panelists, Katie, Diane, Jamie, Isabel, and all of our participants as well. We will be posting this recording of today's program on Bridge Michigan's website, app, and social media channels this week, and our May event will be announced very soon. Thank you all so much and have a great day.